You're with us here this Friday morning on a fresh new edition of Trading Hour, 11 o'clock in the morning. The markets are down by about 66 odd points. The Sensex is down about 248. The big story, of course, is coming from the oil markets with that big jump which we saw in crude oil prices, 5% surge, and that is all geopolitics. So tensions between Iran and the US jumping up. To right now, oil in Asia is absolutely flattish, but the WTI reached 57 and Brent about $64.5 odd a barrel. Asia is mixed as well. I mean, I'm talking about equity markets. So, I mean, you've got a couple of markets up, like Taiwan, etc. But, I mean, you know, the mainland Chinese markets are down and a bunch of others are lower in trade as well. So, I mean, it's mixed out there and it's showing up here in India as well. We saw that big surge yesterday. You know, that was essentially a mix of short covering and a couple of specific situations starting to see some relief. And I think that elements of that are still there. So you look at some of these names. Look at Indiabulls Housing Finance, for example. It's having a bit of a volatile day, but it's holding that 600 rupee mark. You look at something like a Piramal Enterprises, so it surged 7%. That is holding up as we speak. You look at Yes Bank, it sold off about 5% initially in the morning, but I think there was some buying which came back in, and that's back at about 111 or so. So it's down 3%, but I'm just saying that there is some sort of, you know, carryover in these troubled sort of big sell down names that we saw yesterday, the bounces we saw yesterday. Some of that is being carried over today, not to the same degree, but the elements are there. So let's see what the index does, which is down about 60 points or so. Ekta, morning.
Hi Prashant, yes, absolutely. So maybe not a dead cat bounce for a lot of the stocks, but still a lot of stocks under pressure. So for example, Jet Airways, after that huge upsurge that we saw on an intraday basis, that stock has come down around 20 odd percent. Aurobindo Pharma, which is close to its fresh 52-week low, so that stock is down around 5 odd percent. Eros International is in lower circuit, that stock has lost around 20% this week itself, and others which are under pressure include something like a SpiceJet, which is down around 5 odd percent. But on the upside, Lakshmi Vilas Bank, they've received CCI approval with regards to the merger with Indiabulls, so that is holding up with a gain of around 10 odd percent. And like Prashant mentioned, something like a DHFL doing well along with an ATG. Both those stocks were languishing in the past couple of trading sessions. But Mitesh Thakkar is with us to discuss the technicals of the market now. Mitesh, hi, morning, over to you. What do you recommend in terms of stocks as well as in terms of the Nifty?
So, you know, I've been quite positive on the Nifty since yesterday that breakout or reversal happened. But we back to the levels where I think, you know, we would be possibly looking at trading our stop losses, which is roughly at about 11,750. So in case that level in cash breaks, then I think, you know, we'll leave out the long bias. But for the timing, I think that bias still remains. The stocks which I would look at possibly right now would be a buy on Vedanta with a stop at 170. Look for targets of around 180. And the other one which I like is Chennai Petro. In fact, despite the fact that there's some rebound happening in the oil, the price pattern suggests strong base building around the 207, 210 zone. So keep a stop below 210, 209 is what I recommend. And 222 could be the target on the upside.
Is Piramal coming up to any sort of important levels, Mitesh?
That's Piramal Enterprises? Prashant, I think it's just bouncing back from oversold levels, extremely beaten down from 2400 rather, fell to 1740. I think this pullback in C, and I think it needs to clear this level of 1940 on the upside. Today's high is there. I think then it can see 2035, 2040 on the upside. I think that should be it. So I am not looking at a big reversal over here, but I think mostly some kind of pullback which could still play out.
Okay, well, Mitesh, we have a Twitter query for you. We have Jainam Sangvi who wants to know if Dilip Bilkon is a buy at current levels.
See, I think I've not been tracking the stock regularly, so very difficult for me to, I think, you know, comment on that. Unfortunately, I've not been looking at the stock for quite some time now.
Okay, any alternate, or what would you recommend for a lot of people who are stuck in these mid caps which have declined significantly? For example, Dilip Bilkon is down, say, around 50 odd percent in the past 1 year odd. What would you recommend to investors who are stuck in positions such as these?
See, I think a good idea would be to possibly shift into, you know, large caps which have the fundamental, in the sense that I'm saying that they have stronger fundamentals, and then possibly they could look at some kind of reversal happening. And one of them would be Larsen & Toubro or State Bank of India, where I think the movement is such that possibly you could see a good upside happening in the next 6 to 8 months. So I would rather switch from mid caps to large caps. The mid caps still are not showing promise on the longer term charts, I think, which means that they might take a lot of time to reverse for the time being.
Okay, thanks Mitesh very much for that. We'll sort of come back to you and take stock of what's happening. I mean, is the market going to start to see some recovery or it's not? We'll see. Indiabulls Housing, it's a nifty name. It's seeing some more recovery. It's at about 612. It's up another 2% or so. Picking up as we speak. We're also going to talk about a bunch of other names like Aurobindo, names like Sobha Developers, Tata Motors, Maruti, and we're going to go across to our researchers for exactly those. Let's talk about Sobha first. About 4.2% equity changed hands this morning. The stock, I think, is down 7% or so. Sonal is here with what she's picking up on this deal. Sonal.
Well, yes, as you rightly pointed out, the stock is under pressure, down around 7% and there has been a block deal in the morning of around 4.2% equity. That is around 202 crore rupees in total. Well, if we go by the shareholding, around 55.97% of the holding is with the promoters, around 7.46% is with Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund, and around 5.5% is with Schroeder International Selection Fund. So these are the three parties that could actually shed off around 4.2% overall. However, we do not have any confirmation with respect to who really the seller or the buyer is, but we also have to note one interesting fact is that promoter pledges at around 18.84% of the total promoter shareholding, and that is around 10.5% of the total overall shareholding. So these are the facts, and it'll be interesting to know who actually the seller is today. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Sonal, thanks very much for that. So that's on Sobha. That stock is under pressure, down around 7%. But in the auto space, two stocks under pressure are Tata Motors and Maruti. Sonia joins in to tell us about what's plaguing them. Sonia.
Well, thanks a lot for that. On Maruti, there is a big downgrade that has come in from UBS. They've downgraded the stock to a sell. They've slashed their target price to 5,800 from 8,000 earlier. They've even cut their earnings estimates. FY21 volume growth estimates have been trimmed to 5% from 8%. They say that apart from the usual issues like a demand slowdown, overcapacity, etc., the one thing that is a big risk in FY21 is the fact that Maruti has decided to move away from the diesel segment. So remember, a complete diesel exit is what Maruti has planned, and that continues to be a big risk. That's because UBS believes that there is still a lot of diesel dependence that the growth segments have. So for example, compact sedans, SUVs and MPVs, which are still doing relatively well, have a diesel dependence, so that's the additional negative. For Tata Motors, Moody's has downgraded both JLR as well as Tata Motors standalone business credit rating, and at a time when JLR still has a capex outline for the next 1 year, the fear is that it will be hard for them to raise money at a time when their credit profile has been downgraded. Moody's speaks about the same old problems that Tata Motors has. The leverage will remain elevated. Debt to EBITDA is likely to remain above 5 times for FY20 and 21. Free cash flow will remain negative as well. Apart from that, three big issues that Moody's highlights. One is that the Chinese market, on which JLR is very dependent, has seen no recovery at all. Two, there are still issues with respect to, the no-deal Brexit as well as the potential US tariffs, which remain a concern. And the third thing is that the ongoing trends in electrification of vehicles will bring about a lot more capex and investment, which will put more pressure as far as the balance sheet and the P&L is concerned. So that's the reason why Tata Motors is under pressure today.
Okay, Sonia, thanks very much for that. That's Tata Motors for you. Aurobindo is also in news. Ekta is right here. Ekta, what's the news?
Well, one of their units has received a warning letter, so that's the reason why you're seeing Aurobindo under pressure. Their unit 11, which had received an OAI or an official action indicated, which means the probability of a warning letter increases in any case, all the way back in May, just last month. So 3 of their plants were issued that OAI status, and that included this particular unit 11. Now, it's an API unit. Despite the fact that it's an API unit, the point is that there is a larger regulatory overhang which might be weighing in terms of sentiment for Aurobindo at this point, because with this unit 11 has now received a warning letter. The two other units, we don't have certainty in terms of what the progress on that would be, considering that they too have OAIs. So we don't know whether or not that could probably escalate. And separately, the Unit 3, which was inspected just a few weeks ago, has received 10 observations. It's an oral solid dosage manufacturing facility. So I think the street is just worried about what could happen to Aurobindo in terms of the larger picture on the regulatory angle. And separately, they have other issues. For example, they have their debt, which increased by around $166 million on a Q-on-Q basis last quarter. Plus, they also have, they're one of the companies which have been named in the US when it comes to the entire drug allegations of manipulation on drug prices. So I think that's a culmination of events which is really weighing down on the stock.
Okay, Ekta, thanks very much for that. That's Aurobindo in focus. So that's a bunch of things to keep an eye out on. I just want to highlight, so Sobha, Tata Motors, Maruti, Aurobindo on your screen, the stocks that we've discussed. I just want to put up an intraday of Indiabulls Housing Finance. It surged more. I mean, I think it's up around 3.5%, 620. So there is a bounce which is underway. Okay, it's come off a little bit, but 617, 618 on Indiabulls Housing. We'll come back and we'll take stock of the rise